Hello and welcome to the Home Assistant Podcast. This is episode number 67. As usual, I've got with me Rohan. Good evening.
Good evening.
And another Canadian this time, so Northern Hemisphere representing. James, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
This episode is sponsored by Home Assistant Cloud by Nabu. Easily and securely access your local Home Assistant instance remotely for a small monthly fee that also supports the Home Assistant project. The configuration is done by the user interface, so there's no fiddling with router settings, SSL certificates, or any YAML.
All right, Rohan, we are going to do it. We've got another month, and I think it's May, so another pun, I think. So I've got this, I'm going to call it May the Cloud Strike Again. So Wink has done the old bait and switch. They're now requiring all of their users to pay a subscription fee to enable remote access to any existing Wink devices. So this is, I mean, we're in the middle of, so it's May 2020 for people listening in the future. We're in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic, and Wink has come out and just basically sent an email to all their customers saying, Wink has taken many steps in an effort to keep your hub's blue light on. However, long-term costs and recent economic events have caused additional strain on our business. So they're now charging all their users that want to continue accessing remotely $4.99 a month to continue their existing access, which sort of, so they didn't even give a month's notice. I think it was by the time this podcast comes out, that's it. You have to be paying that subscription fee. So I'm sure a lot of people are annoyed at this.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of stir around this, and rightfully so. And it's one thing to say, hey, we're going to deprecate some hardware and blah, 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 like kind of what Logitech did.
Yep.
This is a whole other level, because I think at some point, and this may have changed, but last I checked, they gave people 2 weeks to be like, I think at first they gave them a week, and then they're like, oh, no, sorry, kidding, 2 weeks. And and I might be wrong there, so please don't send out the pitchforks. But regardless, the timeline they gave was pretty short, and especially during a pandemic, it's like, okay, like, okay, fine. Is your idea that, okay, well, even if it shuts down now, it's not going to affect a whole lot of people because there's not a lot of people traveling? Or is it like, hey, I'm going to take you out back and beat you up kind of thing, right? And it kind of feels like it's almost like the mob tactic that Wink is taking here. But I was listening to, I forget what I was reading it or listening to another podcast, something like that. And they were talking about Wink might have, the issue is that, they're as a company is, apparently their staff haven't been paid, so on and so forth. So it's like they're bleeding money, and that's why they had to do it. I just think that the tact that was given there, and listen, I there's a ton of companies that are going under, especially during our pandemic and stuff like that. It's just, it's hard to keep the lights on. It's hard to pay people. It's hard to, I get it. But I think the way they went about doing this is also not really ideal. I mean, it would have been different if they're like, hey, like, listen, folks, like, if you can, like, we are struggling as a company, please donate to us, do whatever just to keep this going. I'm sure tons of people would donate.
Yep.
If it were opt-in and sort of a community collective effort, it would serve to unify their users rather than feel like a bait and switch.
Totally.
Absolutely.
And like for me, it's like I pay to Nabu Casa. I think Phil, I believe last I checked, you did as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And James, I'm not sure whether you do or not.
I haven't yet, because I'm all into messing with the APIs and
great. I mean,
nerding it up.
For me, it was more around just supporting the community, supporting that, right? Like, I mean, really, most of it, I had it working myself, right? Including like, hey, poking a hole to the firewall, blah blah blah, doing all that stuff, and I mean, I had my own security ways of going around that, but it's to me, it's the community or that team going, hey, we want to keep making this product better, but we don't have the resources to, and absolutely, and I know I'm not the only person that's paying into Nabu Casa just for, honestly, just it's more as a, hey, I believe in kind of the mission, I believe in whatever, and I'm sure if Wink did something similar, they would have been okay, right? And again, I sympathize that you are a company that's, and if this is true, again, I heard this from another podcast or from another like YouTube video or whatever, so I don't know how the accuracy of it, but if it is true, just again, there's a better way of doing this. Oh, you might have just shot yourself in the foot, and you might as well, like, I don't know, to me seems like most of Reddit is just livid, right? And I was reading about quite a few folks that were like, hey, I was actually looking at the Wink Hub, and because they did this, I don't want to do it. It's not even about the $4.99. Some folks, I understand, especially now, it's hard to make ends meet. A lot of people have lost their jobs or been furloughed or what have you. So I get that side of it. But the other side of it is, out of principle, a lot of people are like, no, you can't. It almost feels dishonest, right? Whether that was the intention or not.
I think so. I totally agree. And I think for me, this business model, a lot of, and Wink isn't the only business to have this model where, they pay for their cloud connection based on new volume of sales. And Wink is definitely not alone in this, but this highlights the problem with that business model. When all of a sudden sales dry up, the business still has to carry on the expenses of those cloud connections. You can't just expect to be able to talk into your Amazon Echo or Google Home and get them to turn off and on those devices when there's a cloud service that is being paid for by new devices from new customers. So this is, definitely highlights the problem with this business model, and unfortunately it won't be the last.
Yeah.
I think we're going to end up seeing a big move to hardware as a service.
Potentially.
Yeah. And I think, what a couple of people are saying as well online is, even if you say, to your point, James, even if it's like, hey, you know what, the hardware actually costs this much money, and why don't you just bake it into the monthly subscription, and we'll give you the hardware at a discounted or a free or whatever. It is the cloud model, right? Even in business, that's the cloud model.
Yeah.
Right. We'll reduce the price of something and kind of bake in that delta so it's affordable for you or more consumable, let's call it. Maybe not necessarily affordable, but right. But even if it's not 100% off of the hardware, and okay, great, it's 50% now, and the rest is kind of going into that $4.99 a month or whatever, right?
Cell phone carriers have been doing it successfully for a while now.
That's right, yeah.
Absolutely.
So if you're stuck, if you're a Wink user and you are having to look down the barrel of having to pay that $4.99 fee, the Nabu Casa subscription is $5 US a month, and there is, I think you can basically do everything that you can do with the Wink remote connection and not have to give your money over to Wink. There has been a new Discord channel set up in the Home Assistant Discord server, the Wink_migration channel. So there'll be a lot of people that are in the same boat that are helping each other out. So there are some places that you can go to get some help there.
Yeah. And there's a lot of cool alternatives as well, right? Especially a lot of DIY Zigbee radios, Z-Wave radios, so on and so forth. There's some that are both. Have a look, do whatever research if you are a Wink user. Here's another one is Belkin disables some of their cloud required Wemo cameras. Essentially, they've turned off the cloud services that's needed for that stuff, for the Wemo cameras to work. I mean, their website is pretty much, and I quote, although your Wemo Netcam will still connect to your Wi-Fi network, without these servers, you'll not be able to view the video feed or access the security features of your Wemo Netcam, such as motion clips and motion notifications. Although the Wemo Netcam may still connect to your wireless network, direct IP access to the video feed of the camera will not be available. If you're unable to provide a receipt or return your Wemo Netcam hardware, we will not provide a refund.
Ouch.
So, I mean, I guess it's a little better than the Wink, because at least they're like, hey, if you have a receipt, you could return it. Maybe, I don't know, but I not the greatest.
I think they're doing it limited by only if it's in a warranty period. So if it's more than, if you bought it from more than 2 years ago, that's it, right? Like you've just now got a paperweight.
Totally. Or a series of paperweights in this case. And cameras aren't cheap either. So I think, again, probably better ways to do this. Even if you're turning off your cloud stuff, to say, hey, listen, that's going down. We just enabled local IP connectivity to it.
Yeah.
Do with it what you'd like, right? And
I think this is something we've discussed before, Rohan, as well, where, if a company was going to do something similar to this, they should just open source their backend and let, tinkerers and other people in the world be able to at least salvage something. Because right now there is a lot of e-waste going into tips everywhere because Belkin's just decided that it's too hard to enable access for everyone. So just thank you very much. See you later.
Yeah.
That's such a disappointment considering the resources it takes to put those into place and the fact that the hardware is still perfectly good and they're simply locking us out. It's a sad way to view things.
Yeah. And to your point, from an environmental aspect of things, it's terrible how much crap are we collecting because of this, right? But I guess that's so another one bites the dust, let's call it.
And something that I think maybe just a little mention that came across from the Home Assistant side is Home Assistant announced that they were going to be deprecating their installation, their generic Linux installation, and that's actually been put on hold. A lot of people came out and said, no, we are very much disappointed in this decision. So good to see Home Assistant reacting. I'm not sure what the answer is going to be, but definitely watch the space there. But Rohan, are you using Home Assistant in a Linux environment, or are you just using Docker still?
I am. So I'm running. I'm doing both. So my main instance is just a straight up Docker instance, running on one of my Docker machines. What I have my Zigbee stuff on is running on a Raspberry Pi 4, running Debian or actually Ubuntu, and on there. And again, I have it as a installed version on there. So it's not running the Home Assistant version of Linux. It's running straight up just Ubuntu Linux. And that's running the Has.io flavor, so the Home Assistant supervisor and so on. So for me, I am affected by this. So a couple of things is I know there was, when they did come up with the announcement, a lot of people were upset about that, and I do get that. There was a couple of clarifications on it because just to clear things up, it's not that they're not removing it, it's not going away, it's just they're not supporting it, right? That was the intention of it. So you could still do it. It's just and typically if you're installing it on a Linux system, so on and so forth yourself, you're probably experienced in using it, so it's not as big of a deal. And I did speak to a couple of folks that are part of that Nabu Casa core team, and it comes down to the supportability of the platform. It's not necessarily feasible for that team to support your specific distribution's installation method, blah blah blah. And when it's a Home Assistant issue, absolutely they are willing to support it. When it's not, then it's how long, how is the entire team going to spend at times troubleshooting your Ubuntu instance or Debian instance or whatever. And that's not to say that the Discord is not available, and it's not to say that the community is not available. It's just that core team of developers will not be supporting it. Right?
Which makes sense.
So now again, taking a step back, they did post another note saying, hey, this is okay, we're gonna rethink this decision, and I don't know what's going to come out of that decision, but they are revisiting it and trying to see how they can play it and what they can do. So that decision is on hold for now.
I think there's also been some confusion about what exactly is and is not being included in this messaging. I've got some friends of mine who are running it in Linux, but in Docker unsupervised.
Correct.
And they're concerned about that instance. I'm running it in Docker with a supervisor.
Yeah.
And, those methods are still working fine and going to be supported. And I would almost argue that it's simpler than actually trying to install it on a Linux environment.
Absolutely.
At least in my experience.
Absolutely. And the nice thing I like about the Docker install and for the team from a supportability perspective, the nice thing is it's pretty easy to find out if it's within the container or not within the container. If it's not within the container, there's very clear lines of delineation of Home Assistant will support this and or Home Assistant, or, it's something local to your machine and you're on your own kind of thing, right? And when
you're going to have to rely on the community, right? Which is how I got it working in Docker.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Even when you're on your own, you're not really on your own, right? And there is a huge community around this, and a very responsive community around this. The forums are great. Discord is great. Again, you're not left out in the cold, right? It's just the messaging is that the team themselves, the dev team, will not support this as part of their official capacity as a developer of Home Assistant, right? Meaning, if you put it in as a issue in GitHub, it'll probably get closed, right? And say, hey, this isn't a Home Assistant issue; it's a issue of your platform.
I think it makes perfect sense when when the full scope of the impact is understood of what it is and what it isn't. I think it makes sense and will ultimately result in a better user experience for all of us because we've got a consistent UX.
Yep. And that's why if you look at other, let's call it paid for systems, right? I mean, we just talked about Wink, but even you talk about Smart Things or anybody else, the nice thing that they have is it's on their hardware. So they own that full stack. Yeah. Right? Here, it's not, right? It's not a supported, if your solder is coming loose on your Raspberry Pi and something's, flaky, there's only so much this team can do about that, right? And I think that was kind of the point of what they were trying to make. I don't know that it was communicated that way, whether how it was received or how it was sent from the Home Assistant team's part. Again, could it have been communicated better? Maybe, but that is the extent of what their messaging was.
I think for anyone who's worried, the key thing to know is you're not going to be left high and dry, and you're not going to be left on your own to figure out.
Yeah, good call. Yeah, exactly. So just don't open an issue in GitHub for it if this does become a thing.
Apart from that, there was a big release, 0.110. I like the nice number. It's a symmetrical number. Right. I like it. All right. So a lot of features, very, very jam-packed. So first one we have is the Agent Dvr integration, which is a new DVR platform, and you can manage you can manage the DVR platform itself with sensor data coming in to Home Assistant. So really cool. I'm guessing you may be able to do, if it's a proper DVR system, turn off and on zones that are recording and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I always love security stuff in Home Assistant.
Yeah. BLE Box has also been integrated. So it looks like a European, possibly Polish. I know when I went on their website, because I was like, oh, what's BLE Box? Or it might be BLE Box. I don't know. So I'm sorry. Apologize if I'm pronouncing that wrong. But yeah, Google Translate was like, hey, do you want to translate from Polish to English? I'm like, yeah, okay, great. So I'm guessing it's a Polish platform. I don't know if they go across Europe or what have you, but essentially it's just another home automation platform. Is in this initial release, they're basically on Home Assistants only supporting garage doors and kind of gates that open and close, as well as temperature sensors. So you'll see those. But if you do use that platform and you use other devices as part of that platform, they may not show up in Home Assistant on this release. I'm not sure if there's any updates coming up for it, but assuming there is, those might get added in.
Another integration that's been really making a lot of moves quietly in the background, I think, is Z-Wave to MQTT. And that's actually becoming more of an official integration now. And I think it's becoming almost part of the core Home Assistant product. That it's going to be optional for the time being, but I think Home Assistant's seeing the power of this new Z-Wave over MQTT project and sort of might be in the future giving people the option to move to it. So it's basically now utilizing Open Z-Wave's Qt Open Z-Wave daemon to control the Z-Wave network over MQTT. And if you've got Home Assistant running with the MQTT add-on, it should just automatically set itself up and do everything like that. Or if you've configured Home Assistant to connect to MQTT, it'll leverage that. But I think the problem Home Assistant's always had with Z-Wave in the past is that Open Z-Wave hasn't typically been an open project. It wasn't open source, so the Open Z-Wave library that Home Assistant was using was sort of hacked together, and Home Assistant for a long time was using an older version, and upgrading sort of had consequences for other users. But now with this new project and moving towards that, there is, the option to have a better, more stable Z-Wave integration with Home Assistant. So I'm very excited to see how this goes in the future.
Yeah. No, that'll be a good, again, step in the right direction. Also, the Home Connect integration. So it basically integrates appliances that are powered by the Home Connect platform. So Siemens, Bosch, there was a few other ones.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so I'm not sure exactly what appliances, but I know there were appliances as part of Home Connect that were like dishwashers, washer dryers, so on and so forth. So that's kind of neat. You don't see a ton of this kind of stuff, right? Hey, here's this coffee machine that's actually smart.
But also like multiple brands communicating on a protocol that they've developed in partnership with each other. And then that partnership being opened up to allow sort of Home Assistant and all that to communicate with.
Yeah, and I wasn't too sure about that because I don't know, because as far as I know, Siemens and Bosch and all these other companies are separate from each other, but maybe they're not. I don't know. Yeah. But whatever it is, I mean, that's a pretty large. I mean, Bosch themselves are a very large appliance provider, at least from what I've seen in appliance stores here.
Yeah.
Not that I frequent appliance stores, but it's great to see that. I mean, it's kind of neat. I mean, would I pay a premium for a smart appliance? Maybe not, depending on what it offers. But it's awesome that that's a thing now.
I have a smart washer and dryer, and I swear by it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Is it cloud dependent? Like, are you at risk of another Wink/Belkin issue if they decided to remove their cloud?
So mine are LG, and I'm really disappointed with their approach towards sort of the community. There's no dev portal. There's no request an API key. It's very closed. But there has been some really interesting work been done to reverse engineer their protocol.
Nice.
And there's an integration in the community add-on store that works incredibly well as of the last couple of weeks, and it's continually updated. So the native LG SmartThink app, the only thing it will do is allow you to check the state of your machine or give you a notification most of the time when it's finished.
Most of the time.
And now that it's integrated into Home Assistant, it's so much more powerful, and I can connect it to a lot of other stuff so that I don't actually miss the notifications, because I have a bad habit of completely ignoring my phone when it beeps.
Yeah, you can have a text-to-speak notification or something like that saying, hey, your laundry is done, washer's done, dryer's done, right?
Yeah, it essentially yells throughout my entire house that I need to go attend to the washer dryer. And when I'm not in the house, my kids hear the notification and they ask me what's going on.
Yeah, and that's when you promptly remind them the yelling is for them to go do the laundry. I mean, it's funny because I've got, I think mine's like one step lower, so mine doesn't actually have Wi-Fi on it. So I got new appliances as well in LG, and it's the SmartThink app. From what it does for me, is kind of crap. It's like you got to hold your phone up against. I think it's some sort of NFC or BLE that they use, and it's like you got to pretty much hold it up to the gear, and like if it feels like it'll pick it up and it'll tell you that there's something wrong or not. And I'm like, cool, you couldn't just integrate that in the LED, like cool.
Yeah.
Apparently you can also have different programs and stuff, like you can download a program to the washer dryer and stuff like that, and I'm like, cool. I use normal, so it's the one feature I use.
Mine has a handy dial on the front that like when I'm doing bedding, I just turn it to that one.
Yeah.
But that's about as involved as I want to get.
Yeah. But it's interesting, right? Because it's almost like I don't know. I mean, don't get me wrong. There is some sort of a value to having these smart appliances, but at some point it's like, hey, I got to physically be there to put the clothes in the dryer or in the wash anyway. So I mean, at that point, I'm turning a dial. It's actually more work for me to pull out my phone or tell my voice assistant to do something else. I might as well just turn the dial, press start, call it.
Yeah, when I was looking at appliances for my house, which I moved into last summer, the only appliances I wanted that were smart were the ones that are in the basement and I forget about. Everything that's in the kitchen, I'm going to be there anyway. So if the fridge door is open, it's going to beep at me and I don't need a notification on my phone because I'm right there.
Yeah, exactly.
Some other noteworthy updates, and this is one of my... I was really excited when I read this in our little alert about the new release. Not conditions in automations are now something you can do. So they're supported both in YAML and from the UI. So essentially, if you have, for example, an alarm panel and you have it in a state of disarmed, there are multiple other states it could be in, and you may want to just say, if it's not in disarmed, then the automation can run. Previously, to do that, you would have to do a whole bunch of ands and grouping them all together, state, is it this, is it that, is it this? Or you might even have to, like I did a lot of templating, is in a template is state or, is state or, is state or. Now, and Frank, who has integrated this, thank you very much, Frank, you can now, similar to how you can group automations with an and or an or, you can group a whole bunch of automations under that, and it just does the opposite, very cool, very powerful. So thank you very much, Frank.
Yeah, it saves a lot of time too. I know when I was going through my stuff, I was like, breaking my head going, okay, trying to just work through the logic. And I know, Phil, you helped me out a little bit, and Frank actually helped me out quite a bit too. And it's like, okay, eventually I was like, okay, I got it to the way I want it to be. And it's like, in a couple of cases, not would have helped, where I ended up using templates and stuff like you said, Phil. Some updates on the integration page. So now entries are grouped together under each entity. So let's say you have a smart LG smart system like we were talking about earlier for appliances, and then you can have washer, dryer, all that stuff under there. And there's also a search now, which is really nice because I hated scrolling through that list of if I'm adding a new integration and let me search for the one thing, and it's like so now I can just like. Smart Things is one I like to, for whatever reason, I just in my own accord end up breaking it like once a month. And the plugin actually works really well, but like I'll make some changes and I'll be like, oh crap, I got to remove it, re-add it, whatever. And that, every time I'm like S, okay. And then SA, SP, okay, I found it. And it just makes things so much easier. So thank you so much for that search. It's the little things, right?
Totally. It's now possible to ignore discovered integrations. So this is something that has been really bugging me since they did that auto discovery, that little notification icon in the corner to say, hey, we found a new Sonos speaker on your network. Hey, we found a new Roku device on your network. And you're like, I don't want it integrated in that. Like, go away, dismiss. And every time you restart Home Assistant and comes back, you can now tell Home Assistant, ignore it. So thank you very much.
Yeah, that one is, especially if, I know, Phil, you do this as well, if you run multiple instances. So my main instance has a lot of stuff. My other instance is like, hey, we found Wemo switches. And I'm like, cool, I don't care, like go away. and just the OCD in me, it's like I see the notification, it's like every time I have to go in and I have to clear it, and it's like one other thing that I don't need to do now. So that's really nice. There's also a new calendar panel. So this was interesting. So at first I looked at it and I was like, is this just Google Calendar on it? No, it's actually an integrated calendar. Yeah, it actually looks really nice, I gotta say. There's a full and this is, again, it's a panel, not to be confused with a card. So this is a separate window essentially, or a separate tab, however you want to call it. It's panel is the proper term for it. Where basically they do a month, week, and a day view, or you can choose between them, and you can kind of see your calendar. It sounded like, according to the release notes, it sounded like there was a Lovelace card that they're going to be working on as well. So you can kind of integrate like maybe a mini calendar or whatever into a Lovelace page.
That's really cool. I'm really digging the calendar integration recently. I've known it's been in for a while, but I've only really started using it to, especially with this pandemic going on, to be able to just fine-tune the way smart home works here. So, for example, I've now set up recurring events, Monday to Friday when we're working from home, so that, our alarms don't have to go off as early because we're not driving to work, we're working from home. And, now the house knows, okay, you're working from home today, so I won't wake you up at 7 o'clock in the morning. I'll let you sleep in for a bit. I'll turn on some lights because you're going to be working in the home office today. So yeah, the calendar integration is very powerful. So I do recommend if people have got, like recurring things that happen, maybe every once a week or something, you get a cleaner that comes in and you need automations to do something different, or, babysitters, something like that. It's a very powerful way, instead of an upgrade to the old input Boolean switch that you would have to manually flick on and off.
Yeah, that's nice.
It allows me to dump my whole schedule of the garbage pickups here.
Yes.
Because they transition between winter and summer.
Nice.
In the winter, it's once every 2 weeks for some of them, but not for others. So I've actually got just a spreadsheet that when they send out the new calendar, I put all the events into the spreadsheet, dump them into my calendar, and then my house knows every day when I get back. The night before, when I get back from walking my dog, I know which bins need to be pulled down to the curb.
Mm-hmm.
That's very smart. HomeKit integration. So they've actually, I swear every release, Rohan, there's HomeKit has got a new feature, and it makes me really jealous because I'm an Android user. Anyway, so they've now added in camera support. Yep. Entity information is now in the accessory property in HomeKit, so you can find out more details about what is actually going on. Really cool to see HomeKit just powering on. There's a lot of devs working on it, and you guys are doing an amazing job on it.
OnVIF, or ONVIF. So Home Assistant now supports pull point subscriptions. If you're not familiar with it, that's basically the protocol that they use for with your cameras. And so it lets you pull other important sensor data too now. So that means, let's say your camera also has motion state or object or sound detection, stuff like that, to some sensors that'll say yes, true, false, right? Yeah, I detected sound. No, I didn't detect sound, whatever it is, or hey, I detected motion. So those can actually be brought in as well. So now the neat thing is you can actually, and again, if maybe in certain areas you haven't invested in a motion sensor, but instead you've invested in a camera, you can actually kind of use those multiple
sensors,
or one device as multiple sensors. Exactly.
Maybe Belkin could have used some of this, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's but so I think there is a dependency where your camera would need to support OnVIF. It's not. I don't think it's. I think it's on the manufacturer to include that or not. So.
Yeah, there's most cameras do, but some of the budget cameras. I know the ESP32 cam. Currently, there is no firmware available for it that supports OnVIF.
Yeah. And a lot of and there are a lot of even let's call it consumer cameras that you do go to whatever store, Best Buy or what have you, and go buy, and some of those cameras don't support it either. Again, they've got their monthly subscription, blah blah blah. Use this to pull our video, so on and so forth, right? Some do, some don't. So if you are looking for a new camera, that might be something interesting to look into, or if you're just getting into home automation. And you're looking at cameras anyways, this might be a great way to save money on having to buy motion sensors and or whatever other sensors in that area, right? So
I'm guessing you might need to enable the stream component if you want to be able to see the cameras in Home Assistant and push them out.
Yeah, I think that's independent of the pull point subscription, though.
Okay, right.
I think that's a separate facet of so as a protocol, it'll have multiple different things, right? And this is. The pull point subscriptions are, from what I understand, and I might be very wrong because I did about 3 minutes of Googling into this. So, whatever random website I visited told me this information. So it might be extremely wrong. So, but essentially, this is the portion that actually pulls a lot of that extra data or metadata, if you want to call it that, around that video. So it's not the video itself, but OnVIF is that same protocol that they would use to communicate with the camera for that video and such as well.
Makes sense.
So I hopefully I sounded like somewhat of an expert, which I am definitely not. So please do not consider my word gospel.
You're very convincing.
Yeah, I might be very wrong here.
All right, the supervisor UI. So if you are a Home Assistant user, previously known as HAS.io, there is a supervisor interface that sort of allows you to see a very big snapshot of how the Home Assistant or the system is running. There's been a lot of UI updates to that in this release. But a big change that's coming is that some add-ons from I'm guessing from not the community store, but the add-on store for Home Assistant are now being marked as advanced, and you can only be seen when you have advanced mode in your profile. So I'm guessing these would be for advanced users. Maybe there's some add-on that can do some, maybe like the SSH extension or something like that you may want to enable. They will be hidden from a non-advanced user. So don't be alarmed if you upgrade to the latest version and there's a lot of add-ons that you used to use have all of a sudden disappeared. Just go in and flick that advanced mode in your profile to on.
I know when we put this list together, and one of the things Frank said was, man, this is one of our biggest releases ever, right? So in a sense of the amount of changes, and that is so true. Like just everything, kind of the last few things we've talked about aren't necessarily like specific integrations, but they're like platform level, like large scale changes, right? Even up to and including HomeKit and all of those as well, right? So I'm it's pretty nice to see all of these changes coming in. But also, obviously, with those changes, sometimes come breaking changes, and there is a decent list of breaking changes in this as well. But let's just kind of go through, a couple that we think are important here. So first off, Blink. So if you use Blink cameras and stuff, they removed the old username and password method now. So if you have that, that might not work. So now you need there's a 2FA key and so on and so forth. So you would need to use that. And keep in mind, a lot of these, this will be adding this integration down the road will also be only through the UI, right? For everything, exactly. But this is a great reason of why, is because if you do have a 2FA enabled application, it's easier to do it that way through the UI.
Tuya has been upgraded now to use the integrations UI as well. So if you have Tuya in your YAML, you may need to remove some keys that may no longer be supported.
Also, the HTTP component. So in there, there's a sub component or a config entry for base_URL. And this typically says, hey, this is, homeassistant.mydomain.com or whatever it is, and to set it to that. So a lot of integrations and such rely on that. So that's actually now being deprecated, and they're moving towards an internal and an external URL. So as in, if you're, let's say as an example, you do expose your Home Assistant instance out to the internet, and your external URL might be, has.duckdns. whatever. And your internal URL might just be, whatever, homeassistant.local or like 192.168, whatever. So now your integrations can now leverage either the internal or the external URL. So and it actually gives a bit of flexibility. So no matter which one you come in through, it will be accepted. So I know in the past, before I had my base URL set, this is a long time ago when I was first learning Home Assistant, I ran into issues where there were components trying to reach out to my Home Assistant instance on my public DNS name. But at the same time, Home Assistant was configured to use not that name, essentially. And so, stuff was getting confused and all that stuff. So this actually, I realize it's a breaking change, but it's actually a very good use case for this. And I think there's actually a bunch of value in using that internal versus external URL.
So just as a heads up, because when I upgraded, I actually had, this did cause some issues for me. So I have text-to-speech running through my Sonos speakers, and once I upgraded, I just needed to go in and just confirm the internal and external URLs in the UI. I found that whatever the default was using, actually, I think I just needed to do a second restart or something for the setting to apply. Mm-hmm. But my Sonos speakers they were getting an unauthorized error when trying to find the MP3 file to play on my local network. So just go in. Once I confirmed the two URLs were correct, there was no issue. And I do believe the external URL can also leverage the Nabu Casa remote URL if you have a Nabu Casa subscription enabled, so that's also very handy.
Correct.
ZHA, the configurations via YAML are now being deprecated as of this release, so it'll be removed completely in 0.112. So if you have any configurations for the ZHA component, they will need to be moved over to the user interface.
As well, manual alarm panel. So if you utilize this and you're moving from disarmed to whatever other state, there'll be an intermediate arming state. So it used to be called pending. So that's that process of it going from disarmed to whatever, away or home or what have you. So in the middle, if you have any automations that do have that do leverage, hey, it's in the middle of this and it's called pending, that now needs to change to arming. However, when you're moving from an armed state to a triggered state, it will stay as pending. I'm not sure what the logic is or why that was done that way, and I'm sure there is a reason for it. But I'm not aware of what that is.
I think the pending, it's sort of the pending is the alarm is about to go, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So, but there's also a few other state attributes, config options and stuff like that are, and kind of the way the timing is calculated and such. There's a bunch of changes. So if you do use the manual alarm panel, I strongly urge you to go read the release notes and have a look at that. There was a bunch of stuff that's changed essentially.
I use the MQTT manual alarm panel, and I got very trigger happy and updated all my config based on this. And this is only for the manual alarm panel. It is not for the MQTT manual alarm panel, which still uses the pending. Yeah, so when I restarted my Home Assistant, a lot of stuff didn't work. I was like, oh, that's sad.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Universal devices, the ISY 9994, they've moved to version 2 of the underlying library that powers a lot of the Home Assistant integration. And as such, there is a lot, and we mean a lot, of breaking changes. So please, if you're using this, go in, check the release notes, because you're going to need to do a bit of work here today. I don't know, that was really long.
I know, that was I mean, what are we?
I don't think a lot to talk about on a Home Assistant release in quite a while. That is a huge release.
I know, it's 45 minutes in, so it was that's a decent size update.
It's an exciting update.
Yeah, we did spend a bit of time talking about the cloud between
Wink and Belkin.
Stuff getting disabled essentially. Yeah, so so James, what's going on in your world?
Well, I'm moved into this house almost a year ago. And previously I was living in an apartment where I was not allowed to basically touch anything or even paint the walls. So it's been an interesting transition from designing things that are very explicitly temporary to actually integrating in with the real hardware, because no one's going to tell me that I'm not allowed to do that anymore.
Right.
That's cool.
So it's been a lot of fun, but I as with a lot of things technology in my life, I tend to go in all the way and then sort of take it a little too far.
Yeah.
So right now I've got Home Assistant running on a server in my basement with I think something like 25 containers on it now in total, and just having a blast getting all of the things talking to all of the other things.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's cool. So coming from like an apartment to a house, what was like the thing that you wanted to, like you've been most excited to be able to do now?
Probably actually have light switches that are usable as light switches.
Nice. Yeah.
Previously, all of my light switches had to remain in the on position because if you turned it off, nothing would work. So when my family would come and visit and turn light switches off, it would be incredibly frustrating for me to the point where if they were coming over, I would put masking tape over the light switch with just the word no written on it.
Yeah.
I have masking tape on the switch I'm looking at right now. I feel that pain. Don't worry.
Yeah. You need to write no on it in a black permanent marker just to make sure that everyone knows that they're not allowed to touch it. But yeah, I've had loads of fun putting in some nice custom lights and really getting a network and integration. I essentially want all of the internet everywhere all the time, and I want all of the things to talk to all of the other things at all times. So I like it that, I can have the lights in the shed are connected, and when I'm in my shed working, I can actually just turn on the music in the shed rather than from the kitchen, and it's all integrated. So just having a proper integration where things are installed and permanent and reliable has been a huge improvement.
That's awesome. And it sounds like you've been doing a lot more too in terms of kind of your own projects that you're kind of building around with the ESP32 and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I've been playing with the ESP32 when it came out, just to see what it was capable of. You know, I'm not great at coding in C++, but I'm not hopeless either. So when it first came out, there was a lot of difficulty and very poor documentation around using Wi-Fi and Bluetooth at the same time.
Yeah.
But I wanted Bluetooth beacon tracking, and Happy Bubbles was no longer available. So I decided to say, hey, the hardware says it should be capable of it. Let's see what it can do. So I wrote up a project called ESP32 MQTT Room. And essentially all it is firmware for an ESP32 that will connect to your MQTT instance and publish to it all of the messages that it detects. Mm-hmm. So that, combined with the fact that the dollar store was liquidating tracker beacons for $4 a piece, means that now I can ask Home Assistant where basically any of my movable things are. So I can ask about the dog or multiple sets of keys or various bags that I have, and it knows where they are. Yeah, no, that's neat. And it's interesting. I have a love-hate relationship with Tracker, like that brand of beacon, the Tracker brand. And I got a bunch and I paid a bunch of money for it, and they all stopped working at the same time. And I was like, are you kidding me? And like, it wasn't battery or anything. It was like hardware, like all of them. And I was like, okay, it can't. And I thought it was just me, but a couple other people had the same kind of experience. I think that's why they ended up being liquidated at the dollar store.
Probably
for $4.
Probably, yeah.
I went out and bought all of them every time I went to the dollar store. So I've actually got, a dozen extra sitting there on the shelf waiting to be used. Yeah. Because I have blown through, I think I've killed about 3 so far.
Nice.
But one was an unfortunate encounter with some acetone. Another one was because I sat on it. So it's definitely not all exclusively Tracker's responsibility, but I'd be significantly more upset if I'd paid the full asking price when they were brand new. Yeah. I think at some point I bought and that was on sale too. I think it was like a 6-pack or an 8-pack for like, I don't know, like $70 or something like that. I don't know. I might just be making up numbers here, but it was expensive for what it was. And I was like, okay, cool. I think it worked like 15, somewhere between 10 and $20 a pop. Like, okay, it's not bad. And and they all died. And I was just mad more than anything else. I think the most useful thing that it's ever done for me is the one time that I went to a shopping mall. It helped me find my car afterwards.
Nice. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but aside from that, it's all just sort of messing around. I had grand ideas of an automation that would have my speakers turn on as I move throughout my house. But the logic behind it was just a little too gnarly for templating. So without going to something like Node-RED, it's beyond my capability in just vanilla sort of templating and the YAML.
Just as a bit of a self-plug, if you want to check out my blog, I've done something with Sonos speakers for you in just YAML.
Yeah, I will definitely take that up because that's been something that I would like to have, is sort of when I go into my shed to grab something and I'm listening to something, just where I am and what I'm doing and what I'm listening to. So just make it happen. It's to me, the connectedness is not what makes it smart. It's the automation that makes it smart.
Yep.
If it's just connected, then you've simply traded one switch for a virtual switch, and that doesn't add anything to anyone's life.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with that. So so is this your primary kind of method of presence, or are you doing other stuff for what is your, let's call it the presence strategy if you want to use corporate talk?
So Basically, I rely on home, not home states for most of my presence detection.
Okay.
And it's all based on network connectivity. I have an Android phone, and I've got it configured to not power save on Wi-Fi because I want all the Wi-Fi all the time. Actually having it pull, I was previously using Nmap, but I've found some trouble with that behind Docker. So I've gone back to asking DDWRT who's on my network, and that seems to be working properly. But essentially, the only things I care about is if I'm home or not, if my kids are here or not, and then if I'm home, if I'm not home and my dog is home.
Right.
Because when the two of us go out,
So you've even got the dog tracked.
yeah, the dog has a tracker beacon on his collar.
Nice.
And sometimes when I go out, I'll forget to put on music for him or something. So I have an automation where it will ping my phone with a notification and say, hey, you forgot to turn on music for the dog. Do you want to put something on for him? And I just have to click yes, and it'll start up. I can't remember what radio station it is, but it'll start up some music for him.
Nice. That's kind of cool.
I like to build things that protect me from myself. I know what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. So if I could have a computer remember things for me, I would much prefer that.
Yeah, fair enough.
So you've got a lot of the ESP32 stuff that you're working on and all that, but have you got any of, and I mentioned, before you mentioned your LG washer, but have you got like anything like a Philips Hue, the LifeX? Are you into any of those ecosystems, or is it more do it yourself where you can?
The only ecosystems I've really gotten into are the ones where you can wipe out the firmware and put something like Tasmoda or ESP Home on it. I'm very much into open source. I think if you can't get in there and like open the hood and see what's going on, then it's not that interesting to me.
Right.
But I'm also incredibly frugal. So going out and dropping, $200 on light bulbs for my house is just something I don't think I could justify personally. But spending $200 on electronics components is absolutely okay for some reason. So I'll go out and buy, $200 worth of microcontrollers and LEDs and MOSFETs and that kind of thing, and take a year to put together something that works about half as well as a Philips Hue light bulb would. But that's just my own weird way of doing things.
Yeah. No, it's fair. At least you know what goes into it. You've put your heart into whatever product it is you're building, and I get that. I get that. There's something almost old school about that, right? Where it's not just a consumer thing, and at the end of the day, you can repurpose those a lot of those devices. Let's say you build a smart light strip or whatever. You decide, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. Great, rip out the controller, use it for something else, right? So, not entirely a waste. I would, in my opinion. So
yeah, I've routinely rip apart projects and scavenge the parts and use them somewhere else. So I've got, circuit boards that are sitting unpopulated because I had to order 10 and only built about half of them before I moved on to something else that is better designed.
Yeah. Fair enough.
But, for me, it's at least as much about the process as it is about the end result. I'm much more interested in spending the time to figure out how to get an automation to work and seeing it work than I am in just sort of asking for something to happen and having it happen. I'm too curious to accept something that I don't understand how it does what it does.
Yeah. No, fair enough.
So one of the favorite automations I got from you when you originally emailed in, and I'd like you to share with everyone, there's the story behind your 3D printer and what you've done with it.
So I got a 3D printer, I guess it was last fall. And I've just sort of been having fun building things in Tinkercad. Haven't taken the time to actually learn much about it and how to use it. But I built a dog boot dryer because I have a greyhound, and when he goes out in the snow and the salt, his feet cannot be exposed because they'll just start to crack and come apart. So I put together a dog boot dryer with an ESP8266. I think I used a Wemo D1 Mini. 3D printed sort of a spiral horn type thing that actually attaches onto a PC fan. So there's one that'll fit an 80 millimeter fan and one that'll fit a 120 millimeter fan. And then it's got temperature and humidity sensors in it. So when I come back into the mudroom with the dog, I take the boots off his feet and I slap them right over top of the little dog boot dryer prongs, and it notices, oh, the relative humidity just shot up really quickly.
Wow.
Let's start the timer, and it runs for, I think we landed on 3 hours was appropriate. But yeah, it's a very useful project, and in fact works really well for my kids' gloves and boots. And it's all open source.
That's really cool.
The files are all on Thingiverse and Tinkercad, and the code is all up on I think it's just in a gist on GitHub, but it's really straightforward, minimal code in ESP Home to get it to run.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's especially like, again, relatable, especially with the gloves and stuff, right? It's like you're out shoveling and it's, hands are sweating or your hat is sweat, like your head's sweating from, and your toque is all, sweaty and smelly and wet, and even from snow falling too. Obviously, that's the obvious one, and I just sound like I'm just dripping, but I think it's a great use case.
Some winters,
yeah, that's true. That's true. So, but especially you're further up north than I am too, so it's a little more. It makes sense. So that's a really unique thing that you built, and I think that's really cool.
It's also nice because my dog would shoot me dirty looks every time I'd put wet boots on his feet. He absolutely hates cold, wet boots, which I think we can all agree with.
Yeah, fair. Yeah.
It's really unpleasant. And I had previously been putting them just on the electric radiator, but they're made out of leather.
Right.
So that dried them out, and they're salty, so they just cracked. And his boots are twice the price of my boots, which I guess makes sense given he's got twice the legs.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I guess.
I mean, math, right? But it felt like absolutely the wrong way to be solving this problem.
Yeah.
Just cooking. It also results in a mudroom that smells like dog feet, and that is not a pleasant smell. And granted, the boot dryer still results in a dog foot smell, but it's just not hot dog feet. Yeah. So it's a little more tolerable,
I guess. Yeah. And still doesn't sound very pleasant, but it's something. I guess if you got a dog and live in a cold place, regardless, you're gonna have dog foot smell.
Exactly.
Ode to dog foot, if you want to call it that. And
but my next experiment, I actually just managed to get a mini air raid siren printed and assembled. I haven't figured out exactly how to annoy people with it, but there's going to be at least one automation. I like the idea of, in Canada, it's illegal to booby trap your house, but there's nothing to say that you can't annoy people who come into your house.
Yep, fair.
So I figure unwelcome guests can get the air raid siren and the smoke machine and strobe lights and just everything I can throw at them to just disorient them.
So the idea is, if somebody breaks in your house, you basically just want them to have a full-out seizure. Maybe a stroke.
I mean, we do have social health care here.
That's true. Fair.
I'll get the notification. I'll see it on my camera, and I'll just call the ambulance.
That's right. So
maybe Home Assistant can. You know what? I'll get. I'll hook up an TensorFlow to one of my camera feeds and have it machine learn algorithm the state for when it needs to call an ambulance.
Yeah, perfect. Oh man! But So speaking of automations and all this, so what are some of your like go-to favorite automations that you've what are you proud of? Some of the automations that you've built.
Number one would be since they built the community store add-on for the LG appliances. I went and created a view in Lovelace that is just a panel with two beautiful marketing photos of the machines that I bought.
All right.
I put state text onto the picture and got it aligned so that the timer on the image actually appears where the timer is on the machine. And then when I start any load of laundry, it will automatically cast it to the Nest Hub in my house. So that if the laundry is running, it shows exactly what I would see if I were looking at the machine in my kitchen. And then when the machine is finished, Google yells throughout my house that it's time to do the laundry switch. That's probably the most useful automation that I've put together. Mm-hmm. But my favorite automation is probably the worst Christmas ever. Because I've always found Christmas carols to be more entertaining the more annoying they are.
Right.
A couple Christmases ago, I took my cheap reusable plastic Christmas tree and put some WS2812s on it, and got all of my lights that are multicolor hooked into this automation and the TV as well. So I could ask Google to Christmas up the place, and it would turn on the Christmas tree and like, oh, that's lovely, a nice calming sort of soothing. And then the TV would turn on and the fireplace would start, and then the Christmas carols would start, but it's Jingle Cats. And then all of the lights in the house, half would be red and half would go green. And then every second they would alternate. So half of the house is green, but the next second it'll be red. And then the last piece was one of those.
This sounds extremely annoying.
Oh yeah, it is. It's and you don't want to know how much effort went into this because it was certainly more than was called for ever.
Perfect.
But the crowning glory was one of those little marquee signs that you can buy with the letters, like behind you, Rohan, right now.
Yeah.
And it was nestled into the tree, and at the very end of it, it would start blinking, and the letters said, "Merry effing Christmas." And it was just, I was so pleased with myself when I got all of that hooked up and working.
That's funny. Followed by getting annoyed by it 3 minutes into it and never using it again.
I'm a former teacher, so things that most people find annoying amuse me.
Yeah.
I've got a very high annoyance tolerance.
Fair enough. That's pretty funny.
Remind me not to cut you off on the freeway.
Yeah.
No, my move there is to smile and give a thumbs up because that just confuses people.
Yeah, that's true.
But there's also room for practical automations, like using the Xiaomi plant sensors to let me know when I've forgotten to water something. Yeah. That's the only thing that has actually kept me able to keep plant life alive in my house. Mm-hmm. Actually when I was back in the apartment, I had most of my houseplants in a windowless room. So having it hooked up with the lights to be able to turn on at sunrise and turn off at sunset was just a fantastic thing. I love that it knows what time the sun comes up and what time the sun goes down. When I was a kid, one of my jobs was adjusting all of the timers sort of, twice a year when we adjusted the clocks. But even then it wasn't ever quite close enough. So being able to have, the outside lights turn on just a little bit before it actually gets dark outside, is something that I appreciate.
That's awesome. That's cool. It sounds like you've put a lot of thought into your automations and even the annoying ones and the not annoying ones too.
I'd say I've put a lot of effort into my automations. I wouldn't say there's been a lot of thought necessarily.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's a good statement. I saw just going through your GitHub as well, and kind of even in kind of the initial conversations you had with us, you also did a NTP synced clock and message board and stuff like that too.
Yeah, that's actually sitting on my desk right here. It's another thing where when the clocks change, if I can wake up and all of the clocks have changed, that's fantastic, because I'm never aware of the clocks changing until after they've changed.
Ditto.
So I thought, hey, there's these little LED matrix modules, and maybe I could get a nice clock to show up on that. And then, of course, if it's connected to the internet, it should be connected to Home Assistant. So you can send notifications to it, and it'll scroll the text across.
Right.
So basically, when I listen to music, I've got a templated sensor that knows, I'll check the state of all of your various media players. And if you're listening to music, I can figure out what the track name and the artist is, and it'll just scroll that across so that I can see what I'm listening to. But it does have a couple of issues. So there's a potential memory overflow or something like that, that causes it to every once in a while just start to scroll gibberish. But my tolerance for annoyance is probably too high, because I haven't fixed it in the last 3 years.
Fair enough. That's that is neat though. It's it's funny because you're hitting home with. So one of the things when I moved in the place that I'm in right now, about 5 years ago. So before this, I used to live with my parents, whatever. And again, even growing up all through that, my job during, daylight savings time day or lack of daylight savings time day is run around and change all the clocks. And I hated it. So when I moved in here, I was like, okay, I'm not having any manually adjusting clocks outside of like oven and microwave. And so I can't really avoid those. So I think I'm still at a point where that's the case. And then when the girlfriend moved in with me, it was, she was like, no, I like my clock as a big whatever. And
with a nice big analog clock on the wall.
Yeah. And well, so there's one analog clock that I don't actually know if it works, because she's like, it's decorative. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm losing that battle. I'm just go for it.
It works twice a day.
Yeah. yeah, exactly. And she had a bedside one, and I eventually it just started drifting so far that it was like, her alarm would go off like 35 minutes after she actually wanted it to go, or sometimes before, because it had actually lapped in what time it actually was. and so I think we're at a good place now where we chucked that, and now she just asked the Amazon Echo kind of what time it is and all of that stuff, and I think she's gotten a routine built around that too. So that's so luckily this is, so far I've been able to avoid it outside of obviously the microwave and oven and the one decorative analog clock that she has that it does look nice. So I'm like, all right, fine, whatever. But
I love that my microwave has a feature that lets me just say, you know what? When you're not doing anything, don't display anything.
Yeah.
Because I've got enough clocks in my kitchen already, and it really bothers me when they're all not showing the same thing.
Me too.
Yeah.
But I won't lie, I actually have looked at how I could put an ESP8266 into an analog clock. Yeah. It's beyond my engineering abilities, unfortunately. But yeah, I've got ideas, but I'm no confidence that any of them are feasible.
Yeah, fair enough.
Well, for me, like we just changed about a month ago back to our normal daylight savings time. And this is the first year that me and my wife have actually not noticed that the time zone changed because we don't have any clocks in the house that need to be manually set. We woke up and all our phones were on a time and like, oh, have we changed time zones? Like, I don't know. And then we also have the Amazon Echo wall clock, which is just, it syncs its own time. So at 2 a.m., it would have just wound its arm around to the next hour or whatever, whichever way it goes. I don't know. I didn't see it because we were asleep and we don't know if we actually moved time zones or not. But that is like for the first time, we've never had to go around, change the clocks and But maybe you could buy one of those Echo wall clocks, James, and they're pretty cheap. I think they're maybe $30-$40 US, and they're pretty cheaply made, if that makes sense. Like they're not sturdy, So you could just rip out the smart component to it.
You're really selling it here.
I know. It's a great product to Amazon.
I actually have an old brass ship's clock that is now on its 4th or 5th pair of guts. Because, it's a family hand-me-down sort of heirloom that I ended up with, and I absolutely love it. And I would really love if it were a little bit smarter than the $3 clock movement that I keep buying to replace it. But
yeah,
I think the best solution and probably the smartest would be to just go and lobby the government to stop changing the darn clocks because it's absurd.
Yeah, rumor is Ontario may do that at some point, and I was like, oh man, I think in Canada, I think British Columbia did that, or somebody did that. Saskatchewan did that. I don't know, Saskatchewan did that. Yeah, and it's like,
I'm every year, twice a year, I rage against the nonsense of it.
It's so annoying. Yeah, it's.
Maybe I'm in the minority. I really like daylight savings time. I like in summer that you get that extra hour of sun.
How? For what possible reason?
And it's not dark until 9 o'clock.
If you didn't change the clock, you'd still get the same amount of sunlight in the summer. You just wouldn't have that like.
It's nice to be outside at like 8:30 and barbecuing.
You could do that anyways.
But I still have to finish work at 5 o'clock, right? Like that's an extra hour of sun I get to use in my own time.
Just leave.
Spoken like someone where the winters mean it doesn't go dark at 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
I think that's the gripe of Canadians is it's not about the summertime. It's the depth of despair in mid-February.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know. I just hate having to readjust. It's like your body is like, whether it's go forward or fall back, there's some level of readjustment your body has to do. And it's like, it's just, I just hate that part of it. Right. And I think, and again, I don't know how true this is, but it's the original reason for it. We're getting way off topic, by the way. The original reason for this was for farmers or something like that. And so that, but
that's actually,
cows still produce milk at the same time and stuff. Sorry, go ahead.
From my understanding, it's actually a lie that it was for the farmers.
Right.
And it was an effort to conserve energy during the First World War.
So my mom told me that too.
Made sense.
Yeah.
But I don't think anyone is really conserving energy with all of our always-on appliances now.
Yeah, there's that too. It's I don't know. I am very torn. Not torn. I'm very passionate, I guess is a better word about it. It doesn't help me directly, and this is completely selfish. I'm sure there's some people like Phil who I still think is crazy for liking this. It's just I don't know. I don't get it.
Yeah, it escapes my understanding to know why anyone would enjoy it.
Sorry, man. I'm not with you, Phil.
In the height of summer, what time? And you've gone into your extra hour. What time does it get dark? Let's solve this issue right now. What time does it get dark for you?
Like after 9:30.
Yeah, 9:30.
Yeah,
well, that's perfect. What are you complaining? That's what you want. You don't in the height like when you've gone.
I have
into
no problem with the
time,
summer.
You want it.
No problem with the summer. It's the spring, the fall, and the winter. Because in the spring and the fall, we have to change, and that's a hassle. And in the winter, it would be nicer if it, I don't mind when it's dark when I wake up, but it annoys me when it's dark when I get out the door in the afternoon. I can't even shovel the snow in the daylight.
Yeah.
So would you prefer it to be like a permanent summertime?
I honestly don't care. Just pick one and stick with it at this point.
Yeah, I just don't want to change.
Yeah. I don't even know when we're technically in standard or when we're technically in daylight time.
Yeah.
Which I should know considering I work with people in different time zones. I just don't because...
Well, you're technically now in daylight time, summertime.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, you sound confused. You are.
I guess that makes sense given that there's more daylight. Yeah, that's an easy way to remember it.
Yeah. I just know spring forward, fall back.
I'm 38 years old and I just figured that out.
Oh, man. That's funny. All right. Well, I think with that complete tangent. Is there anything else we needed to cover?
I think that's about it.
Yeah. All right.
I'm sorry I didn't get to solve this issue for you guys. I think you just need to suck it up and enjoy the changing time zones.
I think you made it worse, Phil. All you did is put salt in the wound.
Yep.
So,
James, we're going to leave. So just FYI, so you've got James, you've got a YouTube channel, you've got GitHub. We're going to leave links to all of that in our show notes. So if you want to go and check out any of the projects that James has done, we will have links in our show notes for you there.
And if you have any questions or anything, shoot me a message. I'm not really that active on Discord, but I'm definitely all over the community. So anyone who wants to
Perfect.
ask me about why I would do any of the things that I do, you're welcome to.
or argue about daylight savings time.
There's no argument. We're right, Rohan.
No, you're wrong.
That's funny.
You're not coming back on the podcast, James. That's it. Until you...
I shot myself in the foot at the last second.
Don't worry, James. You and I can just start our own. It's fine. Don't worry about that. But anyways, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Have a good one.
If you want to share your Home Assistant journey or come on as a guest, reach out to us at feedback@hasspodcast.io. That's HASS podcast.io.
The Home Assistant podcast is hosted by Phil Hawthorne and myself, Rohan Karamandi. For links to topics that we discussed today, check out our show notes on hasspodcast.io.